Hello, everybody. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Wild Women Wednesdays. All right, so give a brief intro. Some of you may already know who I am. For those of you who don't, my name is Leslie Vandersall, the Gutsy Goddess. And my background, I have been a body worker for over 18 years now, specializing for quite some time in what I like to call integrative work, meaning that I combine a number of modalities to achieve the results that are wanted. Lately, I am focusing more on coaching workshops, on that arena. So, this evening, the theme is You Are a Divine Magnet. So we're talking all about manifestation. This is a huge topic. Huge topic. And so we're just kind of gonna probably get the tip of the iceberg here, and that's okay. That's okay. I've offered workshops on this topic before, so I'm sure that it will not be my last. It is a pretty popular topic. So let's get right to it. So I guess the first question might be like, what is manifestation? What does that mean? You are a divine magnet, right? So, and it's a pretty common topic, I guess, these days, right? You hear a lot of people talking about it, or maybe throwing around, oh, I manifested that. Perhaps you've heard of a vision board, or seen the movie The Secret, or read the book, which is maybe 10 years old now. So basically, it goes around the whole premise that everything is energy, right? I am energy. Everything outside of me is energy. So dealing with scientifically speaking, everything is energy, right? So then the idea is that, well, I should have planned for this better. So then the whole idea that whatever law of attraction, right? So what I think about, right, I bring about. So if you've heard of Joe Dispenza, right, he talks on this topic quite a bit and has written a number of books, at least one of which I have read, which is really amazing, and talks about the scientific side of manifestation and how that works and why it works. And involving parts of the brain, specifically the reticular activating system, also known as the RAS, which basically is the idea that what we focus on is what we get more of, right? So have you ever been in a situation maybe where maybe you're thinking about buying a new car, or maybe you go out and get a car, and then all of a sudden it seems like everybody on the road has that car all of a sudden, and yet you never seem to notice that before? Well, why is that? The reason being is because what we focus on is where our attention goes, right? And so then what we could focus on, then that is what we see more of in our reality. Okay, so is more of that there, or are we simply noticing more of that, and really does it matter because it creates our reality, right? Because our brain, our perception creates our reality. This is part of the reason why I do a lot of the work that I do as far as bridging the conscious and non-conscious mind, and really falling in love with all parts of ourselves, or at least being at peace, right? Being at peace, because we want to be very clear about what is happening in our mental frame, because once again, that creates our reality. So, maybe you've noticed, I know that I've noticed this. Boy, when I'm in a really great mood, isn't it crazy how everything just seems to line up? I don't know, that happens for me, right? Everything just seems to line up. It's an easy day. Everybody's super nice to me. Like, I get all the green lights. Like, wow, what a great day, right? When I'm having a great day, that's usually what continues. Whereas if I wake up or something happens and I am angry or frustrated, or maybe I'm in a hurry, right? And I'm like, I gotta be on time, right? Or don't want to be late, right? And then I'm still focusing on late. We'll talk about that a little bit more, right? Um, Word usage. So then what happens, right? I hit all the red lights. Everybody seems like a jerk that day, right? And is that the case? Is everybody really being a jerk? Or is it that my perspective has changed? Right? So it's very curious. It's very curious. And of course, if you have heard of or watched What the Bleep, right? It talks about this idea in the form of quantum physics. I believe that it's quantum physics, and how there are, what is it, waves and particles, right? And so when we look at when we're not looking at an object, then it is a wave, and then when we put our focus on it, then it becomes one specific thing, right? Curious. So basically all the possibilities, when it's wave, when we're not looking at it, all the possibilities in the world exist. And then as soon as we focus in, then it becomes a particle, right? And so, and as we know, anybody who's studied science, or I mean, I seem to even remember this from way back when in school, that, when we watching the results or watching an experiment just by observation can actually change the results of the experiment, which is really interesting, right? I mean, this is obvious, would be, in my mind anyway, much more obvious in like a social experiment, right? It's really hard to be unbiased. So, okay, so hopefully that gave a little bit of a definition. Manifestation is basically when we want something. And, some people call it like power of the mind or energy, and we draw it towards us, right? So we want something and it shows up, right? So this it's a little more complicated than that, and yet that's a very basic description, I guess. And so how do we do that, right? So there are some basic steps. Number one is that you want to get really, you want to figure out what you want, right? That's step one. What do I want? What do I want? And so part of this is getting specific in what we want. I really love Mel Robbins, no relation to Tony Robbins, and she talks about the 4 science-backed steps of manifestation, which I'm going to include in these basic steps that I talk about this evening. And so one of the things that she talks about is that, and this is definitely like one of the hang-ups as well, and also I think a good jumping off point, right? So a lot of times what happens, right? Why are we not getting where we want to go? Well, it's because we have blocks, right? We have beliefs which what is a belief? It's just something that we repeat to ourselves over and over and over again until it becomes true, right? So if we have, like if we want to make X amount of dollars, right? We want to raise our income, let's say, by a certain amount, and for some reason we can't quite get there, or every time we get there, then something happens, right? Something breaks, and then we slide right back to where we were. And for some reason, I'm, we're not able to get where we want to go. So why does that happen, right? So belief systems usually from childhood. So it could be something like the statement I'm telling myself could be something like, I can never seem to get ahead, right? Or this is an interesting one it, it, that you hear the term like filthy rich, right? So maybe my belief is that people who have a lot of money are not good people, right? They're filthy, or they're not honest, or they're, which is, I know very wealthy people, and some of them are really great people, and other ones leave a little bit to be desired, right? So it's those stereotypes, right? And yet that's my internal belief, which I may or may not even know that I have. And yet that is blocking me in some way from achieving that goal. Which, just as a little plug, if you want to work with something like that, please let me know. I do one-to-one coaching, I do guided imagery around that. And so we can begin to clear some of that up and change some of that wiring for you, um, so that you're able to achieve what you want. So Mel Robbins talks about waking up in the morning and writing down five things that you want. They can be the same things every day. They can be different things every day. And basically this exercise, what it does, she calls it dreaming with the lid off, because a lot of times what happens, we start shooting down our ideas before they even get off the ground, right? If anybody's read the book Big Magic, which is really great, by Elizabeth Gilbert, she talks about this, right? She talks about how a lot of times somebody will be like, wow, I really want to write a book or have a best-selling novel. And then they're like, oh, well, how am I even gonna do that? Because I've never done that before. I can't do that. And it's like they haven't even written a sentence, they haven't even written a chapter. So it's like they're already, shooting down the idea before they've even tried. And so, it's like, man, live in it, right? I can't even remember who said this, but I thought it was brilliant when I heard it. It was like, any idea, live in it for about like, maybe a couple minutes. Just really live in it and see what that feels like, and see if it's a good fit, right? So I love that idea of dreaming with the lid off, right? So once again, wake up every morning, write down five things that you want. Sky's the limit. Okay, it should be fun. It should be playful. It's like, what do I want? Okay, no limits. Brainstorming, right? If you've ever done brainstorming, we don't throw anything out. It's just ideas. We're just putting the ideas out there. We can dismiss them later if needed. And so I have found that sometimes that helps me get specific about what I want, right? Um, and so then, you can get specific about what you want. So a lot of times I love visualization. A lot of people use vision boards. I, you know, have a couple hanging on my wall myself. So I was talking to a client earlier today who was saying, boy, I did, a vision board a while back, and I had a house on the beach, and I didn't even know how it was going to happen. And now that person is moving to live on a beach in a few months. Uh, and it's just like, I don't even know how that happened. And yet, There it is. It showed up. So proof that that works. And I, you know, also has worked for me. But it's about getting specific, right? And so I oftentimes look at research, researching on the internet because it's so convenient, right? I oftentimes look at that like manifestation. Ooh, what kind of house do I want to live in? You know, do I want hardwood floors? How many bedrooms do I want? Do I want stairs? Do I want a ranch style? Do I want a big backyard? What color do I want? Do I want a porch, right? So we start getting in this mode of visualizing what we want. So getting really specific about what we want, right? Your future job. How much money do you want to be making? What do you want your schedule to look like? Right? So start thinking about those things. And as you think about it and get really specific, now I understand some people are visual and they see things in their head, in their mind's eye, and other people are not. And that's perfectly fine. There's no one way about it, right? And so, you know, like I said, you can look up on the internet or go drive around or you know, finding and exploring and figuring out what you really want to gain that clarity. And then by doing that, a lot of times I often start finding that I get excited about it, right? Which is part of the process as well. So getting really excited about it and feeling good. And so then the second step, so number one is get really specific about what you want. Okay. To the point where really like you could describe it to an absolute stranger what you want. Okay. And then number two is to ask, really, so to put it out there. To put it out there. Hey, universe. Hey, God. Hey, whatever your belief system is. Hey, universe. Uh, this is what I want. And then, and I'm getting really basic, and we'll talk about a few hangups here too. Time's flying already. So then, step three is to believe, right? So a lot of times, um, what happens is that it's something we don't really believe that we can attain. Maybe we want to win $1 million, and yet there's some part of us that doesn't really believe that that's possible. So if there is some part of us that doesn't believe that that's possible, then there's this, I'll call it misalignment of energy, right? There's a conflict, there's internal conflict. So you know, it's better to, well, do two things, right? So you can step back a little bit, right? And say, well, maybe I want to do a scratch ticket and win $100, right? Maybe that's a little more, you know, this month or something like that. Maybe that's a little more feasible at this point in time. If you're wanting to really go big, then part of that is, why do I believe that I'll say I'm not worth receiving that? Because generally speaking, in my experience, almost everything comes down to self-worth. Whether we feel that we deserve it or not. And sometimes that word deserve is loaded. I get that. I've had that conversation with people. Good friends, actually. Um, so it may be, you know, if I really want this thing to achieve this goal and I am finding that I have some hangups or some beliefs that I am not able to attain that, then that may be part of the self work, as far as where is that belief coming from and how can I reframe that? How can I do the work around it? And so then also something else that Mel Robbins talks about that I really love is she talks about So it's not just about believing it and visualizing it and doing the vision boards. It's also about visualizing the steps that it takes to get there. So that could be part of it too, right? So to, maybe I want a specific job, okay? And yet, um, I'm maybe it's a job that maybe I need some training for, or some, I'm not sure. That's basically, she talks about how you want to visualize the steps that it's going to take you to get there, right? A lot of times in manifestation, it's talked about only think about the end game. Only think about the end game. But then it's like, well, why can't I get to that end game? Number one, it may not be believable for you. And if that's the case, sometimes this is helpful to take a step back, right? They talked about that in The Secret, right? The first step, right? So maybe I don't know how to get there, but maybe I have an idea of, oh, one action step to get there. So maybe I want to be a nurse, right? Maybe I want a job as a nurse. Well, am I qualified for that? No. Okay, well, how could I get there? Well, maybe I start looking at training programs, right? So it's I know, it's not I mean, it's yes, we can wish for a boyfriend, and yet laying on the couch, not taking any action around it may or may not get us what we want, right? So accountability is important. Um, so I love that. I love that she talks about visualizing the steps that lead you to what you want, right? So if I'm like going to train for a marathon, and maybe I've never run a marathon before, and I'm um, wanting to run a marathon and I've never done that before. Well, I'm going to have to train for it, or at least it's helpful, right? For if I want to finish, then I'll want to train for this marathon. Well, part of that is waking up every day and running, going for a run. Well, if I'm visualizing in my head, maybe in the evenings as I'm falling asleep at night, getting up and putting on my shoes and going out the door to run every day, then basically what's going to happen is that my brain is going to start preparing me for the steps that prior to that maybe I didn't want to take. Right? So she says, Mel Robbins says, manifesting prepares your brain and body to do the work you are currently avoiding. 100%, right? Because how easy would it be to just wake up in the morning and go, oh, it's cold outside, and just roll over and go back to sleep, right? But if you've already prepared your brain, right? Because we know that what happens in the brain, our brain doesn't know the difference. Ourselves, our systems do not know the difference between what happens in the brain and what happens out in the real world, right? We know this. We know this through people who work with athletes, right? So there's a reason. If any of you have watched the Olympics or anything like that, then you see, I watch, you know, gymnastics, ice skating, that type of thing quite a bit. And so oftentimes you will see these individuals on the sidelines with their eyes closed, visualizing their routine before they go out and perform it. And we know that the same muscles are going to fire while they're visualizing it in their head that would be firing if they were actually doing the activity. So their brain is preparing them to do the work. And it yeah, let's face it. Like I said, laying on the couch, it takes action, right? At some point, there will be some needed inspired action. And so then another part of believing is I mentioned it earlier is feeling it in your body, what it feels like, not only to achieve that thing, also, like, let's say I'm running the marathon, right? And here's the thing, we want to visualize all the hiccups and our ways around that, what we would do, right? So, in preparation. So, what happens when you're in mile 16 and your shoelace breaks? Then, what are you going to do? Right? What happens when your music cuts out? The battery dies. Then what? Right? Are you just going to give up or are you going to keep going? If we train ourselves mentally to experience any of those hiccups, right? So, dating, let's say you want to find your life partner. Well, maybe you go on a couple dates and they don't end so well. But if you're fully trusting in the fact that that's okay, now I know what I don't want, I'm getting closer to the right person, then you're going to feel more optimistic and be able to continue moving forward and not just want to throw up your hands and give up. And so then the fourth step is to allow yourself to receive and to take inspired action as needed, which is part of what we talked about, right? So it's not coming from this place of fear and forcing, and it's more like go out, enjoy your life, right? You've already figured out this is the thing that I want. You've visualized it, you've asked for it, you're believing in it, and then go enjoy your life. Go have fun. And then when you have an opportunity, right? If you get a little what I call hit as like maybe somebody will say something to you, maybe somebody will come up and offer you a job, or you'll bump into somebody somewhere and they ask you on a date. I mean, use discernment, right? And also perhaps say yes. And maybe by mentally preparing yourself, you are more likely to say yes than you would have been if you wouldn't have mentally prepared. So then, and really, that action is a big step that a lot of people miss, that a lot of people forget. And so that inspired action is really important. I often say that the visualizing is only half of the circle. To complete the circle, it takes action. It takes action to complete the circle. Right? So anytime I'm like, oh, hey, maybe I should call so and so because they may know something about that. Or hey, I wonder if there are any places for rent on, you know, online or at the local coffee shop. I seem to remember that they have a wall there where people put up flyers. I'm just going to go check. I'm just curious, right? When we have little intuitive hits like that, I think it's really important to pay attention to them. Once again, use discernment with what shows up. Okay, so we're quickly running out of time here. So a few hang-ups. I've already discussed some of them, I think, but one thing that happens quite often is that we're like, man, I'm trying to manifest this thing and it isn't happening. Why isn't it happening, right? Part of that, you'll notice that my vibe changed a little bit there, right? So we really don't want to be placing things on a pedestal. We don't want to feel like we need it. We don't, really, we want it to feel natural. That, yeah, of course, this is going to happen for me. Of course, I'm going to get this job. I mean, have you ever had an experience in your life? Maybe you meet a person and you're like, I'm going on a date with that person. Or you're like, I'm going to get that job, or I'm going to get an A in this class. And what happens? It usually works out, doesn't it? Doesn't it? Because you've just decided. You're like, this is the way that it's going to be. There's no other alternative. So it takes a lot of faith and trust, right? Trust in ourselves that we can handle anything that happens. And also, we don't want that clinging, right? Because that just pushes things further away, right? I think most of us have an understanding of that. So maybe you've been in a situation where I don't know, maybe you have a friend or family member or somebody who it feels like they're smothering you. They're always kind of, or a boss, right? Who maybe is very like micromanaging and just kind of always in your business. What happens? You want to get away from that, right? So it's the same with us, right? If we make something more important than us, that it's like, I need this and oh my gosh, and we come from that type of energy, honestly, it's just going to push it further away. And so that's why really like it's okay to be in a space of like enjoying your life, right? Go out and enjoy your life. Go out and have fun. And know that that thing is showing up and it will show up in exactly the right time, right? So it does take some trust. Gratitude is another piece of that, absolutely. So a big part is like it's important for us to be grateful for what we have now. Um, it's okay to be in a place of like, I appreciate what I have and also I want more. That's okay, right? And yet, if we're really, once again, if we're in that energy of like, oh man, this sucks, I really hate this, I just want to get away from it, right? Then we're not, I don't know, that's kind of, we're just kind of running away, right? From something. So it's like if we can get up and at least find some things to make our current situation better or some things that we appreciate about it, even if it's, I know that this is temporary and it's okay because I'm going to learn something from it and it'll take me to my next place. And I'm so excited to get where I'm going, right? Believability, we talked about that. Feelings. So yeah, we really want to be able to feel into it. Um, Sometimes when we're dealing with vision boards, affirmations, that type of thing, sometimes it's not powerful enough, right? So affirmations in particular, like, I mean, I'm a fan of affirmations and also like we want them to really, we want to feel it, we want it to be believable. And so to create a really powerful affirmation, um, I'll just really briefly talk about what we want to include in that. We want it to be a present tense. I am, generally starting with an I am statement, or I allow, I embody, um, I am here, something like that. So present tense, positive language, right? We don't want to be talking about, so like let's say I want to quit smoking. We don't want to say I'm a non-smoker. Smoke free is a little bit better. Even better than that is I am living in peak health or something like that, right? My lungs are free and clear. Um, I radiate health, things like that, statements like that. Um, we want it to be short and memorable, right? Something that you can recite throughout the day. Um, and then you really want to be able to feel it intensely. So it's like if you say a statement like and it's like, yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's not, no, that's not it. You want something that it's like, yeah, that's it. I feel that. I feel that at my core. I got chills, right? I feel that in my bones. Oh my gosh, I feel so elated when I say that statement. That's the right statement. Okay, so keep stretching until you get there with that statement. Um, and then stay with it, right? So a lot of times when we're doing guided imagery practices like that, Sometimes it's helpful to work on one goal at a time, get really specific about it, get really clear, and that's what we're working on, right? And then all of the energy all is able to move in that direction. All of my focus is able to be there. All right, guys. Oh my gosh, a million more things on my list that I would love to talk about, and we're already over. So that's okay. I'll do another one. I'll do another one later. Of course, if you have questions, feel free to leave a comment. I haven't been looking at comments at all. If if you have any questions for me, please feel free to reach out. If you would like to do a one-to-one session, and work individually with some of this, I would love, love, love to work with you. I did some of this work with somebody just yesterday, and it was really fun. It was really fun. So that's it for this evening. Thank you so much for joining me. Signing off, the Gutsy Goddess. Have a beautiful evening. Namaste.